Today's video will focus on the basics of effective presentations. Often students are required to deliver a presentation as part of a class. And when students transition into the professional world, presentations continue in a variety of formats. The basics we will be discussing today will help you both in the classroom and then as you transition into the professional space. There are three main elements of effective presentations. The first is making sure that the content that you're going to present is focused and tailored to your audience. The second is to ensure that the visuals you are using are engaging and help to support your message. The third element of an effective presentation is clear delivery. Let's talk about audience-focused content. So often when we are putting together a presentation, we tend to think about what we want to get across. Sometimes we're not sure what we should put in the presentation, particularly if the presentation is assigned to us. The most important element to remember when deciding on content is to think about your audience and creating content that serves their needs and their goals for the presentation. The first aspect of creating audience-focused content is thinking of the purpose of the presentation. Is this a sales pitch in which you are trying to gain a new client? Is this an informative presentation in which you're trying to update your team on the current performance of your business? Is this a class presentation in which you will be evaluated by the professor? All of these different elements require a different approach. When it comes to class presentations, think about what the professor has indicated to you about what they want in the presentation. Make sure to closely read the assignment, and if you're not quite sure what's required, check with your professor. The second element is thinking about the knowledge and needs of the audience. We don't want to waste precious time telling the audience something that they already know. With that said, we also don't want to leave the audience confused as to the information that we're presenting if they don't have vital background. Therefore, it's important to think about what your audience may already know and what they will be looking to learn from your presentation. The third element that often gets overlooked in the audience-focused content are the parameters of the presentation. In other words, how long do you have to present? What will the audience expect out of the presentation? No audience likes it when someone goes over time. So when you're trying to think about your presentation, make sure you're taking into account the time limit and, when appropriate, ensuring that there's plenty of time for question and answer. All of these elements work together. The purpose of the presentation, again, is about the audience and why they are attending your presentation. Taking that into account, think about what the audience already knows and what they are hoping to learn. Finally, also consider expectations around the parameters, such as time and the ability to ask questions. Let's talk about visuals. Too often, visuals, namely PowerPoint slides or Prezi presentations, are left until the end, when actually they are an extremely important aspect of your presentation. Visuals are what people will see, and seeing information can be very powerful if done correctly. When we're thinking of how to put visuals together, we should select visual elements that complement our content and the presentation, that clarify the information or our points, and overall support the message that we're trying to convey to the audience. When I say that visuals should complement, I'm talking about the tone, the mood, and the goal of the presentation. A serious business presentation will use very straightforward text, images, and other elements to get across the idea of being serious. Visuals should help to clarify and reinforce the information for the audience. Just listening to information is very difficult for most people. So having a visual element to focus on the screen helps to drive home those main points, helps the audience to understand where you are in the presentation, and helps to keep their focus. Just imagine if I were delivering this presentation with a blank screen, or if I were just simply talking to you. Lastly, we want to make sure that the visuals support the information that we are presenting. We want to choose images carefully that reinforce ideas and not undermine them. Therefore, visuals should not distract the audience, complicate the information we are trying to present, and contradict our points. Distraction usually occurs when visuals are not put together well, which I'll talk about in a moment, or selected primarily for their aesthetic content rather than their informative content. Sometimes when people are choosing visuals, they choose charts or other forms of presenting data, and that can be extremely helpful in clarifying the data. But if it's not done correctly, it can actually make it harder for the audience to understand. And furthermore, having a chart for the sake of having a chart is never a good idea. Lastly, we want to make sure that the visuals in some way don't contradict the information that you're trying to get across. I want to spend a few moments talking about text, particularly when we're putting together slides for PowerPoint, Prezi presentations, or other slides. We want to always select an appropriate font size. And here you want to think about the parameters of the presentation. Will you be in a small room? Will you be in a large room? A lot of times people make the text size too small because they're trying to cram too much information onto a slide. If you find that you have to reduce text size to get information on a slide, that means that all that information should not go on a single slide. You need to think about how you can break up the information into phrases, or think about how you may need to use two different slides. Select text that is readable, and select a font that is appropriate for the setting and the occasion. This font may be appropriate for a Halloween presentation, but the font in the second bullet point is extremely hard to read. Keep in mind that not everyone has the same visual abilities. Using a clean font, like the ones I've used for the slide titles and for the rest of the slides, which is Arial, helps people with different vision abilities to understand and to see the text. Never assume that your audience has the same abilities that you do. Be consistent with fonts and text effects. We typically don't want to have any more than 2 fonts on any single slide. The title may be a different font than the body of the text. When using text effects like underlining or using italics, use them sparingly and consistently. In other words, always underline the same type of text, such as a hyperlink. Think about the colors that you are using very seriously. Color can be used effectively to help get different points across, as well as to make information visually pleasing. With that said, color also can be an issue when it comes to people being able to read the font. Finally, I can't stress enough, do not cram information onto a single slide. Select highlights to put on a slide, or if you have too much information, break it up into separate slides. Let's talk about the elements of delivery. Now we can spend hours talking about volume, rate, pronunciation, and enunciation, and we don't have time for that here. So instead, I'm going to give you advice that will help you to feel confident in your delivery. And the first is very simple: prepare. Often people struggle with delivery because they're not adequately prepared. They may have been rushed to put together the presentation, or they may not know the information as well as they should. Preparation is more than putting slides together. Preparation is making sure that you know the information that you're speaking about as well as possible. It also includes putting the slides together and thinking and planning what you are going to say with each slide. The second key element that goes along with being prepared is practicing your presentation. Although you may know the information very well and think you are fully prepared, practicing helps you identify elements in your presentation that may make sense on paper, but when you say them aloud, may be confusing. It also helps you with the timing elements and making sure that you have thought through all the different aspects of your presentation. People who have been given presentations for years or decades still practice. Finally, be prepared for something to go wrong. No presentation is perfect, and sometimes technology may fail. Or sometimes someone may ask you a question, the parameters may be different, or you find out that some element of the setting or expectations is different. Don't panic. Instead, pivot. Think about the audience. Think about what the audience needs, and try and tailor the way you're pivoting around the audience. By preparing and practicing, if you do run into a situation where you have to pivot, you'll still feel more confident in the information that you're delivering. Overall, those are the key elements of an effective presentation. I wish you good luck as you put your presentations together.